Hello everyone. I wanted to show you one position that could have happened. I adjusted the position from the game I lost against grandmaster Swapnil from India. I adjusted it a little bit so that there is a nice combination here for white. So we played Sicilian Taimanov, which transposed to another line. Then I chose a rare line, which is in this case not really relevant to the point. So take a look at this position, and then I'll briefly show you what the engine thinks about this position. So first what you should do, you count the pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. White has 1 pawn down, right? So, but white has 2 bishops, and black has most of his pieces on the back rank. So what can you notice next? So I don't know how about you, but I can feel some tension in black's position. The pawn here is loose, right? Once attacked, once defended. Well, loose is a strong word, but under pressure. The pawn on c5 is once attacked, once defended. And there's also some tension on g7, although there are like 3 defenders and 2 attackers. So it's not really that relevant. Actually, white doesn't have any pawn breaks except for g4, which is very hard to execute. In open positions like this, first you start with forcing moves. The only forcing move that may make sense here is bishop takes f5, which opens the e file. So you should calculate that. If you're not happy with that line, then you consider significantly improving your position. Like in this case, I think h5 is the second best move, getting more space, trying to go to h6, or trying to improve this rook, but it's hard to do. Maybe planning g4 would be a good idea. But number one priority, calculation, forcing moves. So let's see what is happening. So far, black's position seems very solid. The knight on e8 is controlling, this bishop is controlling, there's queen here, and it seems that white cannot blow up the position. But don't give up, keep calculating. One move further. Bishop takes f5, e takes f5, right? What happens next? E-file got open, the pawn is still well protected. What should you do? You should consider other forcing moves. There's like queen e3, but there's black can easily refute this move, either by moving the bishop away or moving the queen closer to the king. So normally you would want to give up, but a small adjustment to this position. Except the loose pawn on g7, the knight on e8 is loose. It's only protected by the king. And if you capture it, the king becomes exposed to the checks. So you have to continue the calculation. Maybe you've got something there. And also I forgot to mention, which is very critical for this position, the fact that rook on h8 is undefended. So in the starting position, combinations do not appear out of nothing. So you have to see these weaknesses. It's not obvious that unprotected rook is a problem. But if imagine you take on g7, then you can win the rook. Just imagination. But see how we can make our dreams come true. Bishop takes f5, e takes f5, rook takes e8, king takes e8, and you consider check. Now white removed all the unnecessary pieces. Now the 3 pieces are continuing the attack. So now the king is under check. King f8 is the move. If you go king d8, this is just queen g5, and you have to go to d7. So if you go to d7, I take on g7, and then I take the rook on h8, and white wins important material and eventually the game. So where else can king f7, queen g7 just mate? So it's a silly. So there's bishop e6 move, then you take with the rook. Still king goes to f8, and after queen d3, white has an amazing attack here. White is crushing. But who would give up the bishop if you can move the king to f8, right? So g7 is protected, everything is fine. But it's not well protected. There are 2 attackers and 2 defenders. King and queen are the worst defenders. If g7 was protected by a knight or by a pawn, that's it. There would be game over. But queen and king are very loose. So you continue with bishop g7. Queen g7, rook e8, distracting the king. So it is actually quite a long variation, but pretty straightforward, I would say. King takes e8, queen g7. So now the loose rook is the problem. What do? Only move with rook f8. You want to stop. You queen against 2 rooks and bishop, that's not good. There's no checks. Taking the pawn is, well, wouldn't help much. But you see another loose rook on b8, which I didn't mention from the beginning because it was not loose. It became loose. So once you continue the calculation, the loose pieces, weak squares, king being exposed to checks, that changes over time. So you have to like update the list of problems in the position. So you continue the calculation, rook f8, and now you see queen c7. Now the rook is undefended. Where should it go? If it goes to a8, it's still undefended. You give check and you win the rook. If rook goes down the b file, probably being the best move. Now you take the bishop, and the queen is much stronger than the rooks here. The king is very exposed. White is one pawn up, and there are a lot of loose pawns. White will eventually win this game. Huge advantage for white. So, and now I want to put all the cards on the table, because the position I had against Grandmaster Swapnil wasn't exactly like this one. The position was my king was on g1. Well, actually my pawn was on h2, but yeah. The key point was I had a king on g1. I calculated all this line until queen c7. Can you see the difference? Starting from here. My king is on g1 in the same line. Pause if you need a minute. There's an enormous difference. We go down the very forcing, promising line. My king is on g1, which was in the game. Black gives check intermediate, which is also critical. Don't forget about your own weaknesses. White, if the king is exposed to any kind of check, that's a sign to be concerned. And after rook b1 check, I have to move the king, and then black can protect the bishop by, say, a move like this, or bishop to e6. And two rooks and bishop are way stronger than the queen. And the number of pawns actually is not relevant, because they will collect all the pawns eventually. So, but with the king standing on h2, there's no check, and white is winning here. Well, not winning like on the spot. White has huge material advantage. So this is how one could see this combination. It's pretty straightforward, but it's a long line. But don't give up. If you see another forcing move, keep calculating. Maybe there's a move like queen c7 at the end, which is what? 6 moves away. Now let's take a brief look at the engines. Usually the engines are excellent in these kind of combinations. So I would point out the Stockfish. I'm going to use the Stockfish 8 on my weak computer. Okay, I'm going to move my face a little up. So depth 21, it already spotted. It was like seconds. And the speed of my computer is quite small. It's now heavy. I'm running other processes. So that's it. Bishop f5, it's a way. Black shouldn't take. Black should queen f7, which is clearly in white's favor, right? So, but the main line stands. The main line is still there. So to depth 21, Stockfish easily found this combination. However, there's one particular engine that is not good at finding quickly this kind of combination. I'm going to use the remote engine now, Komodo 12.2, on a really strong computer. Really strong. You can see my speed was what, like 15,000? Ah, okay, it just saw the... 1 second. Ah, it remembered. I just showed it to Komodo and it remembered. Okay, you'll have to trust me, or you can manually check it on your own if you have access to remote engine, or if you have access to regular Komodo. It found bishop takes f5 only at depth 23. Now it memorized. So now that I think it is memorizing the analysis I do with it. So anyway, on depth 23 with enormous speed, it only found this combination. Komodo is not very good in finding, it will find it eventually, but it takes much longer. How many if anyone there is using Komodo, please be careful. It could be blundering. Depths below 23, I wouldn't even consider a move that it's suggesting. It could be simply a blunder. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this quick combination. I had to make use of the lost game somehow, so there it is. I hope you enjoyed. Take care. See you soon. Bye.